a stat doing the rounds recently that it's estimated that 87% of video games before a certain point have been lost to time. Video game preservation is more important than ever. We can laugh about endless Skyrim ports, but it's a good thing. This sort of treatment should apply across the board, but for now, let's look at the games that are basically available on every platform you can imagine, because I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 video games that have been ported to everything. Number 10, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The previous Elder Scrolls titles were big hits in their respective eras, particularly Oblivion, many stating it to be where the series peaked. But Skyrim is easily the most profitable game in the series simply due to how many times it's been re-released. Arriving on 11/11/11, Skyrim originally released for Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 and PC to widespread acclaim to its open world setting, amazing music and wealth of content. Traditional Bethesda bugs aside, it continues to be a popular choice for PC because of the dedicated modding scene. So popular was Skyrim that since its release, there hasn't been a console from any generation that hasn't seen a port, save for one, the Wii U. But, you know, it's the Wii U. Does anyone really care? When the era of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One rolled around, a Skyrim Special Edition was announced with improved graphics and mod support for consoles. Then, after a demonstration to show the power of the Nintendo Switch, the game was announced for that as well, complete with motion controls, something that would also be used in the VR versions of the game. Then, when it seemed time to move on, the Anniversary Edition for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series was announced, tiding us over until Elder Scrolls 6 arrives in 2000 and whatever it'll be. Literally no console worth your time hasn't missed out on the Skyrim train. Heck, even Alexa got it. Number 9, Final Fantasy. 1987's Final Fantasy was rumoured to be the final game of either developer Hironobu Sakaguchi or Studio Square. In reality, the final in the title was chosen simply as a marketing strategy. You can't say that it didn't work though, because FF launched a franchise that is still going strong today with its most recent 16th iteration. And most games leading up to that point have plenty of ports of their own, of course the first game in particular standing out. The original Final Fantasy was initially launched on the NES but saw re-releases and upgrades on numerous other systems throughout the years. First build of the game can be found on mobile phones, the Wii Virtual Console and the NES Classic. Other editions over the years have had different graphics, new levels, gameplay tweaks and even full motion video. Both Nintendo and PlayStation have seen their own versions of Final Fantasy throughout the years, most often bundled with the second game. You can find the original Final Fantasy in some form for 19 different systems, and for every following game before the jump to 3D, they've all been ported over at least 3 generations. Number 8, Sonic the Hedgehog. The two big platform mascots back in the day were Nintendo's Mario the Plumber and Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog, and both have had their original titles ported to consoles over multiple generations. Mario has stuck to the home comforts of Nintendo consoles. Sonic, on the other hand, has spread his wings and flown from system to system. The 1991 classic launched to widespread acclaim, but interestingly never saw the light of the day for any other Sega consoles apart from the Sonic Jam compilation for the Sega Saturn. Following the company's withdrawal from the console market, Sonic's original adventure has appeared on many different systems as downloads or compilation discs. The Sonic Mega Collection was the first for third-party consoles, releasing for the GameCube in 2002 and later for PS2 and Xbox. It would continue to appear in Sega compilation discs for the 6th, 7th and 8th generation consoles and handhelds, including a notoriously bad port for the Game Boy Advance. It was also one of the major games released for the click-wheel iPods capable of video playback. That's a weird thing I forgot about. So popular was Sonic 1 that it's even tucked away as an unlockable bonus in Sonic Generations. Taking all of these into account, Sonic the Hedgehog has a port on over 20 systems. Number 7, Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 has rightly gone down in history as one of the greatest fighting games ever made. It's also one that's been endlessly re-released with so many different titles that it barely registers as the same game. The original version launched in 91 in arcades before jumping to PC and every console worth a damn in 1992, 6 in total for Europe, including SNES, ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64. A version for Amstrad CPC was planned as well, but it never saw the light of day. It slowly appeared over the years on Sega consoles, PlayStation consoles, Xbox consoles and Street Fighter compilation discs across the many. However, of course, the story doesn't end there, as throughout the years it would be re-released multiple times over with new titles, including new characters and features for more modern systems. For example, the Championship Edition rebalanced the fighters for competitive play, Street Fighter 2 Turbo sped the game up and added in new special moves. And they just kept coming with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Hyper Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, Ultra Street Fighter 2 The Final Challengers, and at this point Street Fighter aren't real words to my brain anymore. There's some kind of Street Fighter 2 on over 25 different platforms spanning over 26 years. Number 6, Minecraft. No open world game in recent years has taken the world by storm, quite like Minecraft has. Naturally, selling like hotcakes for the PC, console releases were soon to follow, and my goodness, there have been lots of them. Starting with the Xbox 360, the infinite world of the PC version was cut down significantly for this release, placing invisible walls if players got too far. It was a similar story for the PS3 version that released a year later. Between 2014 and 2017, every console of the era would see a version of the game, including ones for Nintendo's new 3DS and the PlayStation Vita. More than this, there have been Minecraft editions released to schools for educational purposes, ports for Java software, an edition for Raspberry Pi and VR expansions, altogether making the game playable on around 25 systems, not including unofficial releases, which is a lot of consoles in such a short space of time. Number 5. Lemmings. From literal world building to keeping your hordes of little men alive, Lemmings was one of the pioneers of the British video game scene, created by the same company that would one day become Rockstar, developers of Grand Theft Auto. Lemmings would see players leading their group of little rodent men towards the exit of a stage while avoiding boulders, traps, pits and lava. Fairly basic gameplay, sometimes overly frustrating, but hugely rewarding when you get it right. The game has been remade countless times throughout the years, including an unusual version with the massively underused PlayStation 2 accessory, the iToy. As for the 1991 original, it was ported to consoles left, right and centre for a full decade, the most recent being Java mobile phones in 2005. Almost every console on the market had a copy of Lemmings, the Super Nintendo, the Master System, PlayStation, even handheld consoles like the Game Boy and Game Gear. The CDI even got a port, becoming one of the only games worth getting for the infamous system. Overall, 27 ports of Lemmings existed on the market, with another 3 planned, but for some reason never released. Number 4. Doom. Can it run Doom, they used to ask. The answer is yes. It's always yes. Still as fun today as it was back then, Doom saw a space marine travelling to Mars to battle hordes of demons after a portal to hell is accidentally opened on the planet, and ultra-bloody violence ensues. Well, by 1993 standards anyway. The Doom engine itself was a fairly light program, not taking a huge amount of disk space, and therefore, more often than not, ran as smooth as butter. So porting it to other consoles was a breeze, and as such, it was released on many, many different ones. As well as several different PC operating systems, the first console to get Doom was Sega's 32X add-on for the Genesis, followed shortly by the Atari Jaguar, the version often named as one of the best games on the system. It would keep getting ported through the years, including to PlayStation, Super Nintendo, Sega Saturn, Xbox 360 and even the Game Boy Advance, with official ports being released as late as 2019 for the Switch. 26 official ports of Doom exist on the market, but the number of unofficial releases is truly beyond counting. They include the Nintendo DS, the 5th generation iPod, Java phones, and pregnancy tests. Number 3. PacMan. PacMan has had quite the rollercoaster of a life since his arrival in arcades, from being a tentpole addition to almost every establishment to being one of the prime causes of the 1983 video game crash. One of the first major ports was to the Atari 2600, which sold well but was poorly received by fans of the cabinet. It didn't stop Atari from releasing on other consoles though, like their follow-up system, the 5200, the Commodore 64, Intellivision, ZX Spectrum, and so on. Nintendo would also follow shortly with an NES and Game Boy version, as well as every other variation of their handhelds. Namco would launch Pac-Man via several compilation releases, from Namco Museum Volume 1 for the PlayStation to Pac-Man Museum in 2014 for the 7th generation consoles. All of these into account, the Ghost Muncher has had its original game released on around 35 different systems, not to mention its inclusion as a bonus on other games like Pac-Man 2 and Pac-Man World 2. As the grandfather of the arcade, it's no wonder Pac-Man has been often named as one of the greatest video games of all time and continues to be a mainstay in arcades today. Number 2. Dragon's Lair. Utilising full motion video for its entire gameplay, Dragon's Lair saw you guide Dirk the Daring through a castle of a dark wizard, slay the dragon and rescue the scantily clad Princess Daphne with the power of QuickTime events. A straightforward game that brought the video arcade back from the brink. After its initial arcade cabinet run, various different versions of Dragon's Lair were released to best suit the capabilities of the system that ran it. Some had the classic FMV QuickTime event arcade game, others had a side-scroller, one for the Game Boy was apparently a repackaged roller coaster game. When it comes to the 3rd generation of video game consoles and a number of home computers beforehand, there was a version of Dragon's Lair for almost all of them, and it wasn't just games consoles. Since the original arcade game was technically a film, it's since been released on standard DVD, HD DVD and Blu-ray discs. Including all of the different versions of gameplay available for the one title, around 50 systems can play the adventures of Dirk the Daring. And number 1, Tetris. The Guinness Book of World Records can't be wrong, so with 65 official releases in 2010 and many more since, Tetris is, well, it's number one. Starting as the project of a Russian student in an experiment to use computers to make people happy, Tetris' daddy developed the game for the Soviet Union's Electronica 60 before it saw the light of day in the West 3 years later. Pajitnov had no idea how business worked in Europe or the United States and received help from the Soviet, now the Russian, Academy of Sciences. This resulted in years of legal battles with several publishers, including Nintendo. Eventually, everything was smoothed over and Tetris was released on pretty much every console under the sun from 1988 to today. Regardless of system capabilities or visual bells and whistles, each version of Tetris plays exactly the same way, i.e. drop blocks, make a line to make blocks disappear, and don't hit the top of the board. A simple concept, but one that sold like tinned food on Doomsday. After the 2010 Guinness Book of Gaming Records was published, Tetris officially saw a release on a further 22 different consoles, bringing the total to around 87 systems. Proof of the everlasting appeal of this legend of the games industry. Can you think of any other video games that have been ported ad nauseum? And of course, what video game would you like to see get the same amount of ports as all of these? Make sure you like this video and subscribe, hit that notification bell. There's some kind of amazing video on screen, I recommend you click it. Otherwise, head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.